Hi there folks, well welcome back to the channel, and as this will possibly be the first video on the channel for the new year, Happy New Year to everyone, and hopefully 2021 is going to be better than the last year, but yeah, here's hoping, fingers crossed, touch woods, yeah, so here's hoping. But as this is the start of the new year, I thought that I would possibly look at some Scottish traditions, some Scottish events that kind of take place around about New Year, or kind of become associated with New Year. And yeah, because again, this will be part of my History, Myths and Legends segment on the channel, and thought, well, could be an interesting little thing for everyone to hear about. Because so many different countries have different little traditions, different things that happen. Yeah, it's always kind of interesting to know about. So before I get on to that, if you are enjoying my channel, if you are enjoying my videos, if you can click onto the subscribe button, if you click on that notification bell, leave some likes, leave some comments, it's always really appreciated. And if you'd like to support the channel further, I will be posting a link to the channel's ko-fi.com page in the description bar below, as well as in a pinned comment in the comment section. So the first tradition that is often associated with New Year in Scotland is called first footing. Excuse me. And first footing essentially is when the first person to visit your house at New Year, and it's usually somebody will appear at your door just as the clock is just as midnight is being struck, essentially, and they are supposed to bring good luck to you and your house for the next year, especially if they're tall, dark and handsome. I don't know where the tall, dark and handsome thing came from, but that is always seen as being the thing, that most people will bring you good luck if they first foot, but it just seems to be especially with somebody who's tall, dark and handsome. And usually when somebody does first foot you, they will bring, traditionally it was the three things they bring with them in order to kind of bring you a kind of good luck and prosperity for the next year. So they'd usually bring you food. Usually this is in the form of shortbread. So most people will show up with something like a tin of shortbread or a box of shortbread. In some cases people will show up with something like Madeira cake, because I always kind of associate, within my family, I always associate Madeira cake with New Year, because it was always that around about that time of the year that we'd always get Madeira cake. And so that's usually kind of the food that somebody would bring. Or they'd bring something like whiskey as well, so that'd be the drink. And those are two things that are often still brought to people's houses at New Year. And one thing that was often brought to people's houses in the past was a lump of coal. And that was essentially to symbolise, or kind of, that so that people would remain wealthy and prosperous enough that they'd be able to keep their fires going and keep themselves warm, and so that sort of thing, which is also associated with the Scottish phrase, which is often uttered at New Year, which is Lang me your lumsrake. And that translates directly into English as long may your chimney smoke. And it essentially is a tying in with the whole idea of giving somebody a lump of coal at New Year, or kind of Hogmanay. And essentially it's to kind of symbolise bringing them prosperity for the next year, that they'll be able to keep their fires going, keep themselves warm and keep themselves comfortable. And it is very much kind of, so the whole kind of thing about first footing is to bring kind of good luck to somebody for the next year. And it is something that people still do. And I've done it to others. I've always remember as a kid with mum and dad that we would stay up for the bells, and just before the bells would start, my dad would get sitting outside, usually into the back garden, And just as the bells were ringing and midnight was being struck, my mum would let my dad back in and he'd be sitting there with a box of shortbreads and a bottle of something. So essentially my dad would essentially first foot ourselves, and that was kind of to keep in with the tradition. And yeah, but it's something that is still done at New Year in Hogmanay. And yeah, so I also to mention the fact that in Scotland, New Year's Eve is actually referred to as Hogmanay. And apparently the word Hogmanay has French origins, which might kind of tie in with the whole kind of old alliance between Scotland and France. But it is what, if you ever do come to Scotland, or if you ever kind of hear somebody talking about Hogmanay, they are talking about New Year's Eve. And usually for Hogmanay there is usually kind of a lot of partying that goes on, as that you will probably hear about the Hogmanay party in Edinburgh. I think they could do one in Glasgow as well. Yeah, I don't think that they will have had one for 2020 because of everything that's been going on, but in the past, and hopefully continuing into the future, once everything's calmed down, it has been kind of something that has been kind of quite a big thing and really popular for people to do, and essentially it ends up kind of being a lot of people who will wake up the next morning with very sore heads. But that's a wee kind of extra bit. So one of the big things as well that happens on New Year's Day, especially over in South Queensferry on the Firth of Forth, which is over in the east coast of Scotland near Edinburgh, there's something that takes place that's called the Loony Dook. And the Loony Dook essentially is people dress up in fancy dress and they essentially go in and go for a duck or a swim in the Firth of Forth. And yeah, let's just say the Firth of Forth isn't particularly warm. It's kind of quite a chilly body of water, and especially with it being kind of essentially in the middle of winter, and people are going in to a Scottish river to go for a bit of a swim. And apparently it started in 1987 as a bit of an extreme way to cure a hangover, and it's become quite a big thing now. It's like some people will kind of go in for just a kind of quick dip. Some people will kind of go in for up to about half an hour and kind of essentially go for a proper swim. And apparently as an event itself, it actually attracts people from all over the world, not just Scotland but all over the world, and they go to South Queensferry and take part in the Loony Dook at New Year. And I have seen kind of footage of it on the telly, and it kind of does look like quite a fun event, even though that it'd probably be kind of quite chilly and cold. And in Scotland there's also kind of quite at least 2 fire festivals. I think there's probably more than that, but there's 2 that I know of, and one is called the Stonehaven Fire Festival. No, there is actually more than that. I think there's at least 3 that I know of, with probably kind of more than that taking place throughout Scotland. But I will talk about the 3 that I know of. And one is called the Stonehaven Fire Festival, which again takes place around about New Year, and it's about 50 to 60 people take part, and essentially what they have is these big kind of like balls that are attached to chains, and the balls are kind of essentially a wire mesh that's been kind of filled with flammable things, and are set alight, and the balls end up getting swung around about the people who have got these kind of, who are taking part in the event, end up kind of swinging these balls about and essentially walk through the centre of Stonehaven. And it's usually kind of done around about midnight at Hogmanay. And from what I've read, the present day festival started in the 19th century, but possibly could have its roots in an older festival. Again, kind of celebrating the new year, kind of essentially kind of try to bring light into the darkest part of the year. And it has actually been suggested that the balls that the participants are swinging through the streets symbolise the sun or shooting stars, and it's also said that they are supposed to ward off evil. But it's kind of quite impressive when you see all these people walking down the street, kind of holding onto these metal chains and swinging these kind of large, fiery balls, and it's quite an impressive sight from what I've seen on the telly. And there's also probably the most famous one. It's called Up Helly Aa, which again takes place in Shetland, and it usually takes place on the last Thursday in January. And I've always associated Up Helly Aa with New Year, but what I've read of it is actually associated more with celebrating the end of the Yule season. So Yule is kind of an old name for the Christmas season, and essentially, so it's kind of, again, sort of tied into what a lot of the kind of celebrations at this time of year. And again, it's one of those kind of festivals that is possibly not as old as people realise it is, but still has roots in kind of possibly older celebrations, because the Up Helly Aa that we all sort of can know of today started in 1881. But it does actually also celebrate Shetland's Norse connections, because a lot of the people who participate in the event, who take part in the parade, they're usually always dressed in these kind of pseudo kind of Norse Viking outfits, and they kind of have like helmets on with kind of wings on the side, and it involves the burning of what is supposed to be a kind of Viking longship. So it does kind of celebrate that aspect of Shetland's heritage and history and culture as well. And there's another one which takes place in Burghead, which again is up on the east coast of Scotland, and it takes place on the 11th of January, unless the 11th of January falls on a Sunday. If it falls on a Sunday, then this event takes place on the 10th. And this event is called the burning of the Clavie. Oh, I hope I'm saying that right. Is the burning of the Clavie, and essentially what it is, the Clavie is a kind of sort of large kind of basket kind of thing on a pole, and it is, or it's a kind of like barrel almost. It's been cut in half and it's filled and set on fire, and it's carried through the town. And there's certain points throughout the town where it is essentially refueled so the fire doesn't go out, and it's carried by what is called the Clavie crew, and they take it from through the town and up to the Dury Hill. And it's when they get up to the Dury Hill, there's almost this kind of altar that's kind of set on the summit of the hill, and it's got a kind of socket in the middle of the altar, and the Clavie is placed into the socket of this kind of altar and is allowed to burn itself out. And it's also tradition that with the burning of the Clavie, if part of the Clavie falls off during the whole process of going up to Dury Hill, and somebody picks it up and takes it home, that's supposed to bring them good luck for the rest of the year. And I think traditionally, from what I remember reading about the burning of the Clavie, is that it was started as an event to mark the new year, but because of changes in the calendar in the past, the people in Burghead kept the event to coincide with the old New Year, rather than shifting it to the new year that we all celebrate now. But it's still associated with celebrating the new year and bringing in a new year and kind of seeing out the old new year. And there does seem to be this kind of running theme with a lot of these New Year celebrations in Scotland of trying to bring good luck, trying to bring good fortune and ward off evil and essentially ward off the darkness. Because as people may guess, in Scotland during that time of the year it can get pretty dark, because you can have like what, between 5 and 6 hours of daylight. Okay, I know there are places where they have less hours of daylight at this time of year, but in comparison to what it can be like in the middle of the summer, it can get very dark. And the one last piece of New Year tradition that tends to happen in Scotland, and I don't know if this happens anywhere else, but what we have is called the redding of the house. Essentially, before New Year happens, or kind of up to New Year, especially kind of when you get to kind of Hogmanay, that you've got to clean your house and get it all tidied, get everything else kind of cleaned, and get the house swept out and get it all ready, so that when New Year comes, when it strikes midnight on Hogmanay and we get into the new year, your house is clean, it's sparkling, and it's ready to see in a new year. And it's kind of very much kind of associated with when people used to have open fires in the past, that used to have a lot of ash and a lot of kind of debris from the fire. So it was kind of seen as you would be sweeping out the ashes of the old year and having everything clean and spotless and ready for the ashes of the new year, or for the new year coming in, and kind of having a clean start, a clean slate, and just a nice clean break. And it was always kind of very much kind of seen as being, having a dirty house at New Year was a bad sign. It was a bad thing. It was kind of bad luck. And as I was saying a moment ago, that does seem to be very much a thing in Scotland, at least, that you're wanting to bring as much good fortune, good luck and prosperity on yourself, onto others and those around you when it comes to the new year. And I think with everything going on right now, it's definitely something that I think we probably all could use with right now. So those are some of the traditions that kind of are ongoing. Some are old, some are new, some are not as old as people think they are, but again, they're all Scottish traditions associated with Hogmanay and New Year. And yeah, it's always definitely something that is interesting to look at and to know about. So hopefully you will all enjoy this video. Hopefully I'll see you all in the next one, and hopefully 2021 is going to be a better year for all of us. So I'll see you all later, and a best of luck to all of you in the new year. Bye bye.